Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for your Game Week 5 roundup of all the major news and key decisions ahead of that deadline. We're going to be talking press conferences, injury rumours, who should sell for Son, and what players you might want from Luton, Newcastle. So much more to come in this video. So if you enjoy this one, drop a like, subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. Lots to get through. Okay, so let's first of all do the press conferences. Haven't done this before in these videos, but if this is something you'd like to see, a press conference roundup every Friday, do let me know by leaving a like and a comment, because it'd be good to get some feedback on this one, because it took a little while to put this all together. But we have got all of the press conferences. Arsenal, first of all, Saka is fine, but Partey is out. For Aston Villa, Moreno is going to be back in training. He could come back into the starting 11 very soon. That may impact Cash's minutes, because sometimes in pre-season we kind of saw this. Aston Villa actually like to play with one attacking fullback and the other fullback kind of a slightly more defensively. So they could play Concert at right back there, particularly if they go for more of a flat back 4 formation or more of a back 3 formation. It's a little bit complicated. Cash is still going to be fine for most games, but just keep an eye on that one. Brentford, Morpay is available. He's going to be in the squad this weekend, so maybe Wissa doesn't necessarily get dropped, but we may see reduced minutes from him. For Brighton, we've got Ferguson back in training. There's going to be a late call on him. Fatty is going to make his debut, although it's not clear whether he's going to start or come off the bench. Now, that is going to give minutes risk to the likes of Mitoma and March as well, because we feel like Fatty is probably going to be playing on one of those wings. Estupinian has also had a long travel back after his international break. That is what the manager, De Zerbi, has said. He kind of mentioned this, so I don't know what the situation is going to be there. It's a long travel back from the international duty in South America. Is he going to be available to play? I would imagine so, but we could see reduced minutes, or maybe it's just an excuse ahead of the game. I don't know. For Chelsea and Pochettino, he has said Lavia is out long-term. Reece James is also going to be still out for a few more weeks. So Gusto owners, good news for you. We're probably going to see Reece James back around the start of October. So I believe that is game week 8 maybe, before we see Reece James make his return. Broja and Badiashile, they're back in training, but they're not going to be ready to start yet. So another thing to keep an eye on if you own Colwill or you own Nicholas Jackson, maybe we could see Broja and Badiashile coming in and take some minutes off those players. For Crystal Palace, Gahey is out. For Everton, Calvert-Lewin is available. And for Fulham, Iwobi is available now. But I'm sure not too many of you guys are picking those players. Oh, Liverpool do still have some troubles at the back because Trent is going to be injured for 2 game weeks. Not great news there. Konate could possibly be back, so that is a boost there. But Virgil van Dijk is still out suspended. For Luton, Kabore is back in training, but Bell is going to have a late assessment. So again, Kabore, Bell, we might see a little bit of maybe a rest this game week for each of those players. For Manchester United, we've got some good news that Martinez is back, but unfortunately Varane and Mount are still out. Amrabat is doubtful, but there is a chance he could maybe make his first appearance on the bench there or something like that. And to complete the press conferences that we have today, Man City, Grealish, Stones and Kovacic are all going to be out for Game Week 5. It's probably not going to be too long term for these players, but for this game week, certainly, they're not going to be playing. So the likes of Foden, he's very likely to start now. And if you've got a Gvardiol or an Ake or a Diaz or a Kanji or a Walker or whoever who you have like that, their chances of starting has just been increased a lot with these 3 players out. So that's kind of a good news for you guys if you own other Man City players. Not so great news if you have the likes of Grealish and Stones, who you might want to think about selling. For Newcastle, Botman has trained. He is fit. He's going to be available for this game week. So finally, people can stop selling him and keep him and maybe even buy him as well, because he's going to be a great asset going forward. It's a shame he didn't drop down to 4.4 million though, because that would have been a nice bargain to be had. Tonali is going to be doubtful for this week though. And finally, Sheffield United, Baldock, Osula and Egan. All of these players are doubts for this game week, unfortunately. So, yeah, not going to be a great FPL picks, but saying that they're probably on your bench anyway, so no major drama there. Just do want to go over these 2 injury rumours that we've seen all week. We've got this Saka injury rumour. It's not a thing. Basically, Saka has had this niggling kind of injury, Achilles injury that he's kind of had for a while now, like months and months and months. This is not a new thing. It's just, something that he's having to deal with and manage kind of as it goes on. This is pretty normal for football players. They often have these kind of minor kind of areas of concern in their body that they just have to manage as they go through their football career. Sometimes they improve, sometimes they get worse. You don't really know. But right now, Saka is fine. We've had quotes from Arteta saying, this is not new information. This is just normal for Saka at the moment. He is dealing with it. He is managing it. And, he's going to continue to play anyway. So don't worry about the Saka thing. He is not injured. Same with your Min Son. There was rumours going around. Son is going to be injured. Look at this picture of him with ice on his knee. Again, very, very normal. I wouldn't be concerned about just ice on the knee. If he had crutches on as well, then maybe we could be a little bit more concerned, but he didn't. He was just icing his knee. He's done the same thing against Burnley when he scored a hat-trick. He had ice on his knee then as well. So unless you're kind of, you're really, really worried about the ice and how it might freeze up his knee, apparently the ice actually allows him to score hat-tricks, so that's pretty good. He did, of course, play for South Korea after this picture was taken as well. So again, with Son, no injury concerns there whatsoever. I'm putting both of these rumours in the bin. Absolute nonsense, nothing to worry about. We've got a couple of fixture swings that I do want to mention. So, first of all, Newcastle. I think we need to talk about them. You could say maybe their swing starts in game week 6, but arguably it starts right now with this Brentford game at home. But certainly some really nice fixtures for Newcastle coming up. We've got Sheffield United and Burnley back-to-back there. And then we've got the likes of West Ham, Crystal Palace and Wolves before things start to get a little bit more difficult in game week 11 against Arsenal. So, really nice run of fixtures here for Newcastle, particularly if you're planning to wildcard in and around game week 10 or something like that, then maybe going for a Newcastle player now in the short term could be really, really nice. We've got Liverpool. They're a team that arguably their fixtures swing more like in game week 9, but there's certainly reason to go in on Liverpool players right now as well. There's no problem going in on them. Wolves, a decent fixture. West Ham, not great, but Spurs and Brighton, these are kind of teams you can score a goal against. So you could consider going for the likes of Darwin Nunez or Salah or someone like that in your FPL team that could do pretty well. And Spurs, it's still pretty good for them. I know they've got Arsenal, I know they've got Liverpool, but around that, they've got Sheffield United, Luton and Fulham, which are nice fixtures. So we like this. We like this a lot. Still very much worth going for Spurs players for this kind of decent run of fixtures. So we mentioned Newcastle. A lot of people eyeing up Newcastle players this game week, and I don't totally blame you with this run of fixtures. It's looking pretty good, and I have left it on screen there, guys, to remind you just how good it is. So yeah, who are we going to go for Newcastle? Well, a lot of the appeal is in defence, and I know Newcastle have struggled for clean sheets so far this season, but actually their underlying numbers are really good. They've got really good underlying defensive numbers, particularly when you consider that they've had some horrible, really, really difficult fixtures. They played the likes of Man City, they played the likes of Liverpool in there. You can't do much worse than that, really. Aston Villa in there as well. So, yeah, you really do have to take that into consideration. And did you really expect Newcastle to keep clean sheets in those games? No. But when we look at defenders, often we do look at fixtures more than we look at form. And looking at these fixtures, they're good for Newcastle defenders. So, you want to be going for a Newcastle defender. I think if you want to, Trippier, Schär and Botman seem to be the 3 top picks. Basically, the more money you spend, the more points potential you have. Trippier is going to be the creative guy on set pieces, and it's a bonus point magnet. So if Newcastle keep a clean sheet, it's probably going to be that Trippier gets bonus points in that game as well, whether he gets an attacking return or not. Schär, not so good on bonus points, but he does have good shooting numbers. He takes a lot of shots on, whether that's from open play or from those set pieces as well. And Botman doesn't really have very much attacking potential, but he is nailed and he is cheap. Very easy, cheap route to those clean sheet points. So Trippier, he's your expensive guy. He gets you the most reward. Schär, kind of middle ground. Botman, the least reward, but the least cost there. The one thing I should say is that Schär and Botman should be super nailed on, and Trippier, we could see a little bit of rotation. Obviously, he is a little bit of an older player, and we have got a situation where we've got Champions League football as well, and Livramento has been brought into Newcastle for a reason, and that reason is to give Trippier a bit of respite wherever needed. Now, aside from those 3 guys, Isak is an option. He has got a high upside here. He's a good goal scorer, but he is a big minutes risk. We know that. Even when he starts, he's only going to play 60, 70 minutes maximum, which is really not ideal with Wilson always waiting in reserve. And with Champions League, could see some more rotation there as well. We've got Nick Pope, good goalkeeper in general. He's making saves at the moment as well. I think he's made 14 saves so far this season in 4 games, which is certainly a decent start. The problem is he is a little bit expensive, isn't he? So, yeah, maybe that's the one thing that might put you off Pope. But if you're looking for a new goalkeeper, Pope is not exactly the worst shout. I'm not you know, I'm not saying he's a bad pick, but, you know, he's okay. You can consider him. So, overall, guys, I would probably like to go for Botman the most, just because he's super cheap and, you know, there's no real risk there. And he rotates quite nicely with some of the other players, like Udogie, for example. Botman covers him really nicely in game week 6 and 7 if you might want to, like, bench someone like Udogie, something like that. So, yeah, definitely something to consider. Newcastle players are definitely decent picks, but some of them have a little bit of risk, like Trippier, Isak, you know, for the rotation, and maybe Pope as well, for the price is quite risky. All right, a lot of people asking about wildcards this week and when is the best time to wildcard. Well, let me tell you my opinion, what I'm personally kind of planning to do. And for me right now, game week 10 has been the week I've been eyeing up for a wild card. I've been eyeing it up for a couple of weeks now. It just seems like the right time for me. But you could go 9 or 10, and that's probably my favourite time to wild card as things currently stand. And the reason for that is because in game week 9 and 10, we see some major fixture swings. So Chelsea, Spurs, and Luton, suddenly, you know, they have terrible fixtures. So you probably want to sell their players potentially, or at least, you know, if you're tripled up on Chelsea, tripled up on Spurs, or you've got a couple of Luton players because of their double game week, you're probably going to want to remove at least some of them. You know, even if you want to keep one Spurs player, one Chelsea player, if you're tripled up, you've got a lot of players from these teams. A wildcard allows you to easily remove a lot of those players. And it allows you to replace them with Arsenal players, with Aston Villa players, with Brighton players, and with Liverpool players, all of whom have really nice fixtures. So you've got that nice swing. A lot of the popular players right now, Chelsea and Spurs in particular, we can remove them very quickly, very easily, and replace them with players who we maybe don't have so many of right now, like Arsenal and Aston Villa, Brighton, and Liverpool. I'm sure not a lot of you guys probably don't have more than 3 or 4 players from Arsenal, Aston Villa, Brighton, and Liverpool combined. So yeah, definitely an option there to get some of them very, very quickly, very, very easily, and get a lot of them as well. It gives you easy access to Salah. We know that Salah is not an easy player to just instantly get to. Probably going to cost you at least 2 transfers in order to move around your funds in your team to facilitate an expensive player like Salah. So if you want to go for Salah during Liverpool's great run of fixtures from game week 9 onwards, it might be that you need a wild card to do that, to avoid taking lots of hits. And it also allows you to go in on Luton players in game week 7. So in game week 7, we know Luton have a double game week. If you want to take a risk on Luton players for game week 7, but you don't want to keep these players long term, that's absolutely fine. A game week 9 or 10 wildcard allows you that easy escape from those players you don't really want to have long term. My second option for a wildcard is maybe to just do it in game week 19, which is pretty much as late as you can possibly do it. So yeah, game week 19 is directly after the Man City versus Brentford blank. So I don't know if any of you guys have seen this. I know it's like way away, so you don't need to think about it too much right now. But Man City and Brentford both blank in game week 19 due to other commitments of Man City. So in the international competition. But the point is, you can sell your players in game week 18. If you've got an Mbumo in your team or a Haaland in your team, you can sell them in game week, you know, 17 or 18 maybe. And then in game week 19, you can just wildcard them straight back into your team very, very easily. So if you want to have those Man City and Brentford players long term, but obviously you don't want to have them in game week 18 when they blank, just easy to remove them and then bring them back in afterwards. So that's pretty good. And it also allows you to set up your team really nicely for the second half of the season. So yeah, if you can manage to live as long with your team and you don't need to wildcard for a while, doing it at the last possible moment in game week 19 just allows you to have your dream team for the second half of the season. It gives you a second chance in many ways, a round 2, part 2 of the season maybe. The only other option that I would really consider personally is to just use it in a kind of reactionary way. So I know a lot of you guys, you may have done this already, you might be doing it this week. When your team looks just really bad, whether that's because you've got injuries or you've made a lot of picks that you kind of realised were mistakes and you just want to hit the reset button, you can't really necessarily predict when this is going to happen in the season. So maybe just save your wild card, and if you have to use it as a reaction, then maybe do that as well. So that's what I would say. If you feel like game week 9 or 10 could be an advantageous time to wildcard, and I do think that, then go for that. If not, maybe use it as a reaction if you need to, but better off still, you can save it for game week 19 and give yourself a nice fresh start to the second half of the season. But if you're wildcarding this game week, what should you go for? Well, I've updated my wildcard draft for Game Week 5 once again, and this is kind of what it looks like. So whether you're on a wildcard right now or you are just looking to make transfers and build towards a certain team, this is what I would be aiming for personally. So it's got a 99% team rating on Fantasy Football Hub. We will be leaving a link in the description as always where you can get full access to Fantasy Football Hub for free using the free trial at the moment. So make sure you check that out. You can go kind of try the tool out and, you know, build your own team and kind of see what the AI rates this team as. This is 99%, so that's very, 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 very highly rated. So can't do much better than that, aside from 100%. Predicted points, 66.8 this game week, which is nice. A game week rating of 97%, so you can't do too much better, even in this individual game week. And it does allow 0.6 in the bank, so this team is going to cost you 99.4 million. So yeah, a little bit of money in the bank to save for a rainy day. That's not so bad. You could even make some upgrades to this team if you wanted to as well. But just whizzing through it, Leno, Udogie, Cash, Ruben Dias, who I know we don't see too much of. We've got Son and Maddison in the midfield alongside Bruno Fernandes, Saka and Mbeumo. And up front, we've got Erling Haaland and Gabriel Jesus, who I appreciate Jesus is a bit of a differential, but he's just kind of my second favourite forward to go for in FPL right now. So I thought I'd throw him in. You could maybe go for Darwin in that position as well. I think that's an option. Alvarez is an option there as well. Maybe Jackson if you want to, but if you're wildcarding, it's probably because you want to remove Jackson maybe. But yeah, it might be nice to get a Liverpool player in there. I did definitely understand that one. But Chelsea players in general, I don't think I'd be looking to have many, if any, Chelsea players in a wildcard team, and I don't know if I'd necessarily be looking to have any Brighton players either, but triple up on Spurs looks good at least. On the bench, we've got Areola, Archer, Botman and Bell. We've got Botman to rotate nicely with Udogie in those difficult game weeks 6 and 7. That's very nice. We've got a really nice rotation between Udogie and Botman, so definitely recommend that one. And we've got Bell here as well if you need that double game week player for Luton, but you don't want to spend any money. Just go for Amari Bell. He seems to be the most nailed on Luton player, and we are going to cover Luton players a little bit in a couple of minutes, so stay tuned for that. But that would be my Game Week 5 wildcard team if I was wildcarding right now, and I'm going to try and build my team to something that looks a little bit closer to this, because this looks really good to me. Right, a lot of people thinking about buying Son, but who are they going to sell in order to do that? Well, this is my personal opinion on who I would and who I wouldn't be willing to sell for Son. Divided it into 3 categories. We've got all the most popular midfielders that a lot of you guys have right now. First of all, the sell for Son category. So these are the players I would sell for Son. It would be a pretty easy decision. And those players are Ødegaard, Diogo Jota, Grealish, Bowen, Richarlison, Almiron, Ward-Prowse, and Rodri. I appreciate some of those players on the lower end of the list are going to be, you know, there's a big price difference between them and Son. So maybe you have to free up some cash elsewhere. But I would try and remove these kind of midfielders from your team if it allows you to get Son. But I should also say here, if you can't afford Son by selling these players, but you can get a Maddison instead, then I would probably do that as well. If you haven't got Maddison and, you know, you've got enough money to go Bowen to Maddison, but you can't quite afford Bowen to Son, I think it's absolutely fine to go for Maddison as well. I think Maddison is a really good pick, and I think he should actually have a really good week against Sheffield United as well. I think this fixture suits him arguably more than it suits Son. Interesting stuff. We've got the maybe sell for Son category, and this one is just kind of down to you and your instinct and how you feel about it personally. Kind of the maybe category. Salah, Martinelli, Luis Diaz, Foden, Sterling, Diaby, Eze, March, and Mitoma. I don't think any of these players are must-sell players. And that's kind of the problem. I think a lot of you guys are probably going to have one player in the maybe column and maybe row and no players in the sell row. So if you really want to get Son, it might be that you actually have to sell a player from the maybe pile here. If you really want to do that and that's the only way you can do it, you feel strongly about that transfer move, then go for it. But don't feel like you have to do it. Don't feel like you have to. These players in the maybe pile are still good picks right now that I would want to keep ideally, but I understand that it's not always possible to keep all of the players. You only have a limited number of slots in midfield, right? And finally, the don't sell for Son pile. And there's only 5 players who I wouldn't sell for Son, and that is Rashford, Saka, Bruno Fernandes, Maddison, and Mbeumo. These are the players I really, really like, and I would just not want to remove them for Son at all, which basically means if this 5 is your current midfield, you have these 5 players in your midfield and no one else. And guys, let me know in the comments if the bottom row here, that is your current 5 midfielders. then you've got an amazing midfield, and I don't think you even need Son in your team at all. So stick with what you've got. You're looking very, very good already. But look, most of us are not going to have all 5 of those players, so there is going to be at least a little bit of players we'd be willing to sacrifice for Son. So there you go, guys. Those of you guys who've been asking me, should I sell X player for Son? Hopefully your answer is right here in the video. Just in general, other players who I would consider selling this game week, I thought we may as well do them as well whilst we're on the topic of selling players. So these are your goalkeepers, defenders, and forwards who I would consider selling. So the sell pile would be the likes of, you know, we've got players who are injured or suspended, so like Trent and Van Dijk. I've got Gakpo here. Obviously, he's been playing in midfield, and his attacking numbers are just dreadful. Antonio, you know, these kind of players who... unfortunately, they play against Man City next, so any West Ham player, you're probably going to be looking at potentially selling there. Nketiah here, game time's going to be limited going forward. João Pedro is an obvious sell. Shaw still injured. James still injured, and Varane as well. So, yeah, a lot of those injured players, I would be happy to sell them. In terms of maybe sells, we've got the likes of Watkins, Wissa, Chilwell, Estupiñán, Onana, and Pickford. I don't think any of these players are priority sells, so I would only really do it if there's another player you want to buy who you absolutely love. If you're not like really, really passionate or confident about a transfer move, then these maybe guys I would probably just keep. And then we've got the don't sell. So that's Isak, Darwin, Nicholas Jackson, Trippier, Ferguson, Saliba, Gvardiol, Gabriel, and Botman. These are the players who I would actually be keeping this week. I imagine Gabriel is going to start this game week against Everton. Hopefully be an easy way to a clean sheet. And Gabriel's attacking threat could actually come in clutch for those of you guys who have owned him and kept him in your team for a long time. And the Man City defenders, like I said earlier, I think with Stones still out and also with Kovacic out as well, it could actually present some more opportunities for some of those defenders to get a little bit of game time there. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about your Man City defenders right now. And of course, those Newcastle players, a lot of people are selling them because they've performed poorly so far this season. Things are about to change, so I would be keeping them as well. Okay, which goalkeeper should you start? I imagine a lot of you guys have multiple goalkeepers. I do myself. I have Johnston and I have Turner. I've got to pick one to start. So what we've done here is basically a mini bench list. And those of you guys who haven't heard of the bench list, I really, really urge you to join me on the deadline stream tomorrow. At least 1 hour before deadline. We might even go live a little bit earlier than that, to be honest. Might go a couple of hours before deadline so I can answer and help all of you guys with your teams live. But basically, we do something that looks like this, and it's called a bench list, and we basically order players in the priority order of who you should play and who you shouldn't play, basically. So, yeah, shout out to all of you guys who know what the bench list is already. The higher the player is on the list, the more you should prioritize, like, actually playing them. So, for example, if you, this is an extreme example, but if your 2 goalkeepers in your FPL team are Vicario and Jose Sa, then because Vicario is higher than Jose Sa, then that means I think you should play Vicario. That's basically what it means. You know, if it's close, you've got like, I don't know, Vicario and Leno, I still would put Vicario just ahead of Leno. So start Vicario and bench Leno. This is not about buying players. This is just about who you should play out of the current goalkeepers that you have. We do it with all players in the streams, but this one is just for goalkeepers. So, yeah, in answer to your question, guys, if you've got a Turner in your team, then there's quite a few goalkeepers who I'd actually play Turner ahead of, like Sanchez, Johnston, Flecken, Onana. If Areola is your backup goalkeeper, however, there's really not many people that I would play ahead. I would play behind Areola. Like, I would play pretty much any goalkeeper ahead of Areola this game week because that Man City game is just so tough. So, yeah, depends on which 2 goalkeepers you have, but that should hopefully answer the question of which goalkeeper you should play this week. And again, let me know if you'd like to see this come back in future videos, and we'll do it. And finally, before this weekly roundup gets too long, let's just cover the Luton Town players because I know a lot of you guys are eyeing up Luton Town players. Now, I want to just put this out there straight away. If you're not wildcarding in game week 9 or 10, I probably would not be looking to buy any Luton Town players, if I'm totally honest. The only one player who I would maybe consider if I'm not wildcarding in 9 and 10 is Morris. But even him, not really a player I would want long-term in my team. Now, the fixtures for Morris, next 3, pretty decent. Fulham, Wolves, and then the double game week. after that, you know, you're not going to want to have him in your team, basically. So, yes, Morris, for me, is my favourite of the Luton Town players' picks. You can get lucky with a penalty, a couple of shots there, and maybe you get some FPL points. But please manage your expectations in the single game weeks, because he is a 5.5 million midfielder, forward, for a reason. You know, there's a reason he's so cheap. Do not expect the same points as you're going to get from, you know, I was going to say like Watkins and Jackson, but that's a terrible example. But you know what I mean? Some of the more expensive forwards are naturally going to score more points than him. So just be aware of that and don't feel too disappointed, particularly in Game Week 5 and 6. If you're buying him for 7. Aside from that, the only players I would consider would be the 4 million defenders, because I would not want to spend any significant money on these Luton players. I probably wouldn't buy any of them unless I needed to, you know, downgrade one of my defenders maybe to free up some money, or if I'm on a wild card. Those are the only 2 ways I would buy a Luton Town defender, but there are some options here. Bell looks like the best one, followed by Anderson, Burke, and Kabore. You can read the kind of reasons why on screen if you would like to. But basically, if you have Luton Town defenders already, great. Don't know if I would buy them now, even with that double game week coming up, because Luton are a terrible defense. You're only gonna ever play these Luton Town defenders in that one game week. Even in that double game week, they're probably not gonna get any clean sheets, so it's probably not worth a transfer unless it serves another purpose, whereby you are freeing up cash for another move, or, you know, you're on a wild card and you have unlimited transfers anyway. So that is all I'm gonna say on that one. Morris is a maybe. The rest of the players wouldn't really be looking to buy, but if you have them already, great, I guess. So, yeah, there you go. Luton Town players covered. And I think that's pretty much every topic covered for Game Week 5. I think we covered everything now. If not, then maybe there's some more information in some of my other videos this week that you might find handy. So make sure you do go check out the rest of my Game Week 5 videos if you want more access to kind of transfer tips and stuff like that, and maybe to see what I'm doing with my team. It's good stuff in my team selection video yesterday. I hope you enjoyed that one. But if there's anything I haven't covered, please let me know. Leave a comment. I'm going to try and answer as many comments as possible this week. So pile them on me, and I'm just going to sit on my phone and try and answer all of them. I don't know if I'll succeed. I'll probably have to sleep at some point, but we'll give it a go anyway. If you enjoyed this one, please do drop a like. Let me know. And yeah, subscribe if you're new around here and you want to see this every single Friday for your weekly roundup. But aside from that, thanks so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates.